Okay, so I had been um, in and out of rehabs, institutions. I did a lot of time in and out of jail, probably like I don't know how many years total. But I was an alcoholic and an addict, and I was susceptible to that kind of stuff. And so being in treatment and stuff like that, I started learning stuff. I wasn't just like naive and stuff like that. And I had just gotten out of a relationship where a guy tried to strangle me. Um, and so this is very surprising that, I even told my narcissist all these stories about what happened to me, and he didn't put two and two together. But anyways, so I met him one night. I invited him home, um, and he bought me booze, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm asking him questions, this and that. He's nice to me, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to meet another homeless person, this and that. But he had an income. He was living on survivor benefits, so he had enough to pay for himself because I wasn't going to pay for everybody again like I did before. And so we proceeded to. I let him move in with me in the rooming house. I noticed like little things. I don't know, just little jealous things. And then all of a sudden, like, we got an apartment and we go to move in together, and we start arguing on the first day we move in. I should have taken that as a red flag. Then what happened, I tried to go like grocery shopping with him, and I remember talking to the kid that was bagging my groceries, and I'm like, oh hey, thanks for bagging my groceries. I'm like, I go, you in college? He said, yep. I go, oh, what's your major? He's telling me, and we're talking. Then we go to leave, and Tim's like, why don't you go fuck him and go be with him? And I'm like, are you serious? Are you serious? And he goes, yeah, whatever, Trevor, because the kid's name was Trevor. And I'm like, you gotta be joking me, man. So, anyways, just incidents like that would happen all the time. So it got to the point where I was like, you know what? I need alcohol and I need the relationship. I could care less about anybody else because nobody likes me anyways. I'm a drunk and I'm isolated anyway. So I decided to stay. Um, we ended up getting to a fight, and he called the cops on me and put me in jail for a month. And here's this guy saying he ain't a rat and all this stuff. He puffed himself up to be this big gangster, all this stuff, like this big hero. I spent that month, not only was I drinking, um, I had a detox in jail with no help. I was in there for a month and I felt horrible. And then he was there on the outside. He didn't press charges. The charges got dropped. So I'm there through the whole month thinking I'm going to get pressed charges against me, and nothing happens. So I stuffed it, and I went back and I said, payback's a bitch. But I let it go because I did love the good part of him. And that was the sad part, because when he was good, he was like an awesome person. And so then he ends up taking off on me one day because we get into an argument. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I go across the street to the rooming house we lived in, and he's in the apartment with three other girls, like smoking, and I don't know what the heck he was doing, but they wouldn't let me in. They opened the door a crack, and I'm like, where's Timmy? And they go to shut the door, so I pushed the door open. I punched one of them in the face. He comes running out, runs down the stairs. So then they close the door. I'm like, whatever. And I don't even know if at that point I didn't care if the cops came or not. But then his friend was out standing by his door. So I go over to see his friend. I hang out with him. I F him because I'm pissed off. And then after that I go outside. Then he, is there and whatever and wants, come back and shit like that. Well, then we're living together, everything is normal, and then one of my friends, I run out of alcohol, and I have a friend of mine that owed me a favor because I gave him a refrigerator. I said, look, I'm going to be right back. It's the end of the month. We didn't have any money. So, and we just moved in, so we were kind of rent broke at that point. And so I go over to my friend's house, and I tell Timmy, I'm going to call you to pick me up. Come meet me over there. We were on foot. We didn't have a car. When I'm ready to leave because it's dark out. So then, because I had to pull teeth with him just to go over there. It's like I needed a drink. So then I come out, and my friend walks me out, and Timmy comes bolting through the door, beats the crap out of him, like within an inch of his life almost. And I'm pulling him off him. I can hear the cops. He grabs me, we start running. And so then there's a warrant out for both of our arrests. I'm like, what the fuck? So at that point, I had given up my cell phone. And I didn't want anything, like any kind of contact with anybody, because I needed my supply of boyfriend and booze. And so I had to call up one of my friends. I had to tell him I had a friend. And we had to go to a different state. And my dad gave me an iPhone before we left. And I didn't tell him that we were on the run or anything like that. But the iPhone came in handy because we had to camp outside a lot. Because once we got there, he started gaslighting me. We got into a fight. And the people that let us stay there kicked us out. So we end up in Burlington, Vermont, my God. And we're camping out there. And then we end up coming back, turning ourselves in and stuff. And then after we get out, I'm like, I don't know, it was weird. But, so we go to a different town near my parents. And I figure if we live near my parents, they're going to help us out. I'll get back on my feet. I quit drinking for a year now, so let's quit. As soon as I get out, he buys me beer. I start drinking. We end up in a room in this other town near my parents. And, I try to get close to my parents, but they're drinking. And then, they're arguing. He puts me in jail again for no reason. Again, we were arguing. And I tried to walk out. He called the cops on me. And so I did another month. He bailed me out for $1,000. Cops don't do anything for false reports, apparently. And so then he, came home with, a ton of booze and all the cigarettes and stuff like that, because he wanted to trade cigarettes with my friend Kevin, because in that state they can't have menthol cigarettes. So it's a long story, but he got a couple cards he wanted to sell, and he got me a couple of things of booze. I ended up getting us a better place to live. We move in there, and the cops keep showing up. And I'm like, what's going on? Oh, nothing. I find out from Kevin that he robbed a convenience store. So I'm like, I can't take this. So I leave. I go down to Kevin's. I get my degree and go into hair school. And Timmy's knocking at the door. I'm like, I'm not going to move in with you unless you get a place to live. I'm staying here. I'm not going to be homeless again. And he goes, fine, I'll get a place to live. So I end up helping him get his veterans benefits. He gets a room, and we live there. And, oh, my God, it was hell. The screaming, the fighting. The gaslighting. Eventually I stopped answering him, and then he called the cops on me again. I get out. I find out that the whole time I'm paying rent, the rent wasn't getting there on time. But I know he was in cahoots with the stupid landlord. Long story. Lies. Well, then he's out panhandling, this and that. And this girl is there. So he's already trying to talk to this other girl. I find out about this later, though. I find out about this after. So then this goes on for 11 years, all this stuff. I ended up finally the last straw was broke. I ended up, we argued. I went out. I ended up meeting this huge guy and being with him. And I went to my door and I told Timmy to give me my things, this and that. Then Timmy comes out, finds me on the street a couple weeks later, and he wants me back. So I go back, and I say, look, you have no reason to gaslight me, no reason to fight me. I said, if you fight with me at all, I'm going to leave. He goes, okay. So I go back, and he's acting all weird. He's like, you're going to get me back. I'm like, for what? And I didn't catch on to anything. I knew he was abusive, but I didn't know to what extent. Because it was like the triangle. It was like honeymoon phase, normal calm phase, building up phase, and then the blow up, and then the honeymoon phase, And then, so I keep trying to go to quit drinking. And every time I come back, he's fighting with me. So it was like this cycle. It was like I quit, then he'd start, then I could drink again. I finally got a recovery coach who was a cop. And he knew Timmy. He had Timmy kicked out of the emergency room. He goes, what are you doing with that dude? That dude's bad news. And then everything kind of hit me. And I'm like, I got to break up with him. I'm never going to quit drinking. I got to... And then I heard my dad was sick, so I had to think about that. And things just got, the last week was so bad. He was like just getting worse and worse. And his health wasn't that great. You know what I mean? Like he smoked. He was about 60. And so my mom had to send me my bank card. And she sends me my bank card. And he grabs it out of my hand. And he runs out of the room with it. And I'm like, what the hell? So his survivor benefits got shut off a week before. And he'd been abusing me, and he tried taking my card, and that card has a new PIN, which he doesn't know that. So I figured that was time to leave. So I left. Yeah, I left. Who was using who? But you know what? I loved him, and the way that I looked at it was like I wanted justice. I didn't want like revenge. I wanted justice. I wanted closure. And I got it. I got it. Because I went back 2 weeks later to go get my things and he was dead. Dropped dead. He didn't answer the door. Luckily the air conditioners were on because I don't know how long he was dead in there. But the cops told me when they bashed the door in there, oh, he's no longer alive. And I went... And yeah, so I ended up going home. My father had dementia, so I figured it was time for me to quit drinking. So I stayed home, helped him. I ended up because I knew that my father would help us out. You know, my dad was going to buy us a car and shit, and he threw that away. I didn't even tell him that. You know, it was like, yeah, but I left that motherfucker. You want to play chess with me? Checkmate.